So for our first question, which habits, attitudes, or beliefs were the most important in leadership roles that you have held? And we can go in order, or we can go one at a time.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. For me, I always live by I have 3 core values. I've had them forever, that I just keep, every time I think I'm gonna grow older and change, they don't change. So I would say the first value is community, right? Making sure that everything I do is centered in community, and making sure that I'm actually listening to community, because sometimes I think we live in a system that actually, we talked about this before, that's not designed for us, right? And sometimes when we get in our jobs and our positions, we get swept away, and this is the way things have always been done, this is the way it's always been, or this is how we do things. And that's not how we do things. This is not how I do things. And so I've always had to go back to, who am I listening to, and am I really doing justice and impacting the communities I want to serve? So that's one, community. The second value I have that I always kind of hang on to is service. And I mean service to others. Am I actually influencing positively youth? Am I positively influencing community, my staff, my employees, my family, my friends, and how am I serving others? And that's one of my second values. But the third one, and it's funny because when I was a teacher, they asked me, what are your values? And I remember saying equity. And when I said that way back in the day, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. So when I became, one of my jobs was I was the director of racial equity advancement for Seattle Public Schools. Man, that being a director of equity and standing on social justice with a bunch of white folks who don't want to listen to you is you have to really be strong in your convictions around what social justice and equity are. So those are my 3 values, so those are the 3 things I hang on to all the time, and I still hang on to even 30 years later.
Thank you. Muy buenos días, good morning. It's an honor to be sitting here. As you guys already know, I was a previous student as well in 2017. I still am a student technically at the University of Washington in Seattle. I think for me, all of these questions were good. I don't know who wrote them, but I'm going to say, I think it was Serena, Joyce. You guys did a fabulous job, because I think as you become leaders, and you guys are leaders every day, you guys are taking initiatives, you guys are influencing others, know that it's all part of the journey. I think one of the biggest things that I always have to think about is, you can only control yourself. You can control how you present yourself, how you react to others, how you connect with other people. You want to be a genuine person through and through when you're working with leadership. So that takes a lot of time to get to know yourself, know what you really do hold, in your values. I think that's always a big thing, because when it comes to, being in hard situations, you're going to be presented with things that are going to push your boundaries. And you have to understand, some people are out there to hurt you, some people are out there to stop you, but you need to know what you stand for so that you can, prevail or stand strong when it comes to that. Another thing that I have learned the hard way, I think, is practice makes better. There's no such thing as perfection. There will never be, and it does not exist. So always try your best and your hardest. But sometimes in life, especially when you are in the leadership roles, we're stretched so thin, and sometimes something is just better than nothing. As long as you feel like you tried and you put your best effort and your best foot forward, and sometimes we have bad days and sometimes we have good days, but that's okay. So just remember that, you know, life is a journey. We will continue to be doing different things, and it'll get better because we're getting that practice, that experience. Another thing too that I also wrote down here is you're not the first and you're not the last. But if you are the first, then put your all into it. There's no expectations. That's one thing I do love about going first. When certain things happen, or like when they say, oh, you know, who wants to present first? I like going first because I like getting things out of the way. You know, like there's no expectations. So whatever you do when you're doing it, sometimes there's things that we have to kind of trailblaze, right? That's the terminology that is out there, trailblazing. And it's very, very common. And what does that really mean? It means that you're willing to wander into the unknown, into the gray, in order to get to where you believe that you need to be for your community or for yourself. So, you know, if you're not going to be the first person, you're not going to be the last, but if you are, just try your best. And just with that is be comfortable with the unknown. Sometimes you don't know what you're doing. A lot of the times I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, you know, and that is part of the experience, is you'll figure it out eventually, and even if you don't, you're still doing it, right? I think a lot of you guys here, I remember being, you know, in LLI in 2017, and I was working part-time jobs, 2 part-time jobs. I was living on my own. I was, you know, doing college. Nobody in my family, you know, had ever really fully graduated, and I didn't know what I was doing. There was days where I would sit in my car and sometimes cry because I didn't know, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this where I'm supposed to go? There's going to be hard days, but that's okay. And finally, I think the most important aspect, too, of being a leader is finding your village. So what does that mean? Finding your people, finding your community that fills you, not only, you know, a physical space, you know, because it's great to be in a room full of people, but feeling secure, feeling like you can be yourself, and that you can be out there, let's say like naked, right? Somebody genuinely knows you. You can give them your ideas, you can give them your hopes, and they're not going to feel like, oh, you know, who is this person? Like, start judging you, or, oh, you know, you're too out of this world. Find your community. There's people out there that think like you, that aspire to be something as well. You guys don't have to be exactly the same, but eventually you'll find a group of people that really do complement one another. And sometimes when you're feeling down, they're going to pick you up. And sometimes when they're feeling down, it's going to be your turn to pick them up. So find your village, I think, would be what I would say.
Hello, good morning. Just a pro tip, don't lose your keys. So make you late wherever you need to go. So I think to echo something that they had said before, finding community, and that could be a lot of different ways. And sometimes your community is your own peers in your classes. Sometimes it's, you know, people outside of your community or outside of your classroom, but they're still part of your community. I think one of the things that I really like to do is make sure you're aware that everybody's different. You know, in any position, leadership, position or not, just be aware that everybody's different and they have different needs. Sometimes it's really easy to have bias. You know, the implicit bias is something that it has been ingrained into our minds, and sometimes if we're not aware of them, they can influence your decisions. So as long as you're aware of who you are, what your implicit bias are, and what your blind spots are, I think that will make you a better person and a better leader overall, going, you know, whatever you need to go. One thing I actually went to this college, and I'm still going to this college. I'm finishing up my master's, and working at the tutoring center. There was a couple of times where students came over to me to ask for math help, and they saw me, and then it's like, can I have a different tutor? So, also be resilient in the sense that you know what you know, feel confident in who you are, and even if you feel rejected by peers or society, just know that you are valuable, and you have knowledge. Whether other people want to experience that knowledge or not is up to them, but all you can do is focus on yourself. So, if anything, just keep that habit of making sure that you believe in yourself, and that you know that you are good enough, and that you are a good person, and then you will do great things. So, as far as leadership goes too, always train or treat people and teach them everything you know. One of my mantras is, I worked in many different jobs and many different positions, but every time I work somewhere, somebody once told me that if you always want to work and do your job and career and train somebody who's going to replace you, because you always want to move up. You always want to go to the next thing. So if you're training that person, if you're showing that person that is working alongside you everything they need to know, they will be able to step into your shoes so you can pursue something bigger. So just remember that going forward. You're here, so that's one of the biggest steps. At least being also a first generation graduate in my family, it's getting started is probably one of the hardest. So.
Thank you. So some of the things, community and service to others, it's really impactful. How many of you are first generation? Like you're the first one. Okay. Round of applause for all of you guys, because we need more of you, right? It's hard, right, being first gen, and it's impactful that we're having people kind of share their stories with us of what it is to navigate some systems that unfortunately aren't designed for us. For the second question that we have for our panel, what is one mistake you have made along your journey that helped you grow as a leader? What did you learn from that experience?
Do you mind if I start? I
Yes.
have the microphone.
Absolutely.
So I think I don't know if I have a specific one instance that shaped my life, but I think it's a collective of different experiences. I think, like I said, being resilient. As I mentioned before, just know that whatever your job is now, you're gonna gain more and more knowledge. So it's okay to teach others. It's a way for me to give back as well. In my current position, I now have the opportunity to be a mentor for upcoming engineers. And one of the things I like to do is mention all of the mistakes I've made. Because I feel like sometimes if you share not only your success, but your mistakes is where they might learn the most. Sometimes just learning that you are not perfect. You might be a mentor, you might have a position where you're able to lead others, but that doesn't make you perfect by any means. At least for myself, I'm still learning a lot of different things. I'm still learning how to lead, how to be a better mentor, how to be a good member of my community. So just know that it's a constant learning experience. Everything is new. Everything is always evolving. So I don't think I have a specific one. It's just like a small cumulative actions that happened in my life that led me to where I am today. And I like to take new opportunities and new challenges the same way.
This one was also hard for me, and I think it's our brain that does this, is that we don't hold on to specific, specific mistakes or things that go wrong. It happens, we take it, we learn from it, and then it goes away, in a sense. It's part of who you are, and it's a learning experience, but you never really hold on to those things because we're just so used to having a lot of negative things happen. But the biggest thing about a leader is continuing to go forward even past those. The worst thing something that Rosario always tells me, she's like, the worst thing that they can tell you is no. That's the worst thing that really could happen if you try new things or you try to, you know what, this doesn't work. No se puede, right? And that's okay. But I think my learning curve, I guess, was, just believing in myself. Being a young professional, I am only 25, being in a room with doctorate students as well who have children that are the same age as I am. A lot of the times, it was very intimidating when I first started my role with LETI. And that's something that I've learned is, yeah, maybe I am the youngest person in the room, but I can learn from everybody else. But I also have brought in my own experience, and I've been through a lot of things that have allowed me to gain, this level of position that I do have. I don't know everything. That's never going to be the case, but I do know quite a bit. And so a lot of the times, something that we hold on to is the imposter syndrome of feeling like, oh, like, I don't know what I'm doing, what am I doing here, I shouldn't be here. And that can be something that you struggle with every day, all the time. And I think that has always kind of been in the back of my mind, and until I started my doctorate program, and the part of the leadership that we do work on is actually ourselves, is really taking the time to reflect on yourself and saying, okay, you are enough. It's not you always, right? Sometimes, we do come with things that we need to work on. We're not going to say no, but the system was purposely created to make you feel that way, to make you feel like you do not belong, because that's what they want us to feel like. Like, you don't belong here, you shouldn't be here, what are you doing here? This is not where you should be. You should be working. Just really fast, for you guys to hold on to this, because I learned this in my doctorate program, was schools, actually the curriculum was built with the influence of factory owners. What they wanted you to all learn was how to be a good factory worker. Look it up. SAT scores and standardized testing has been changed now, but it was created to be racist. It was created to prefer the white male on purpose. They did testing, they did research on this. They purposely filled rooms with students to do testing, and they figured out which questions were actually more likely to be responded correctly by white men. And then they picked those, and they made those the standard. So take a time to also reflect on what has been put in front of you, and realize that it's not the whole picture, but it is the picture they want you to see. So you need to take ownership of who you are and make sure that you know you are enough. And I think that's something that Jose mentioned, and I'm sure you will also mention too, but thank you.
So I think I'm the elder in the room. I just turned 60 years old this last summer, so I've been in this a long time. I've made so many mistakes, and because I'm a public figure as a superintendent, and only 5 women of color in the state of Washington, my mistakes are very public. You can look me up. They're public. So I made a lot of mistakes. Now, I will say some of those mistakes in the paper were not really mistakes. They just, the paper reported them as mistakes. But I'm just letting you know that so I've made lots and lots of mistakes in my career. And I always try, what am I going to learn from that? How do I learn from this? How do I be better? How do I do better? That's always, I always think of, when you know better, you do better, right? Maya Angelou, when you know better, you do better. So that's my quote that I take with me all the time. And you also, and I agree with all of you, but then you just pick yourself up and get back and do it again, right? You have to face it, because I think of right now, with everything happening in our nation, right? Our kids need us as leaders to be in front of them. They need all of you as leaders to be in front of them. I need to replace myself, not by one Latino superintendent, I need 5 Latino superintendents in the state of Washington, and then 20 Latinos. Like, I need all of you. If you're thinking about going in education, I don't want you to stop at the classroom. I want you to think about being a principal and being a superintendent and a senior leader, because I'll be honest, I was a principal. I did all of those jobs. The job that you have influence is the job I have now, right? Or when I was an associate superintendent. I had some influence as a principal, but just around my school. But when you really want it, like, I now have influence, I testified 3 times, right? I don't know if I did it right, I probably messed up. My friends took pictures of me and said, "You're on TV." And I'm like, did I say something? I don't care about that. Did I actually influence the state legislator to change the budget? So our kids, our high poverty kids, our immigrant kids get the money that they need, right? So I make lots of mistakes every time, but now I'm older and wiser, and I'm just like gonna do it anyway. Because I just have to figure out, okay, I'm gonna speak up, I'm gonna do it, and maybe I'll make a mistake, and maybe somebody will put it in the paper, but guess what? I don't care, because I'm doing it for our kids. You know, I'm doing it for our community, and I'm doing it for kids that look like me, right? Or have parents like me, or have tias like me, or tios and primos, and all of that. So I think that what we have, and so I have a good friend, my other friend's like Susana Reyes, and she's the superintendent of Shoreline, and we go out to dinner, Elise goes all the time. And we say, okay, let's bring out our chingona self, right? Let's just do it. Like, and we just talk about that with each other, because it's hard. It's so hard. There are days I cry. I've cried. There are days like I want to quit. I don't know if I can do this. There's no principals that look like me. None. I know I look like the tias, so I don't look like what people think a superintendent. I've even had somebody say that to me. You're a superintendent? I'm like, sorry, I'm gonna swear damn straight. I am. So I've gotten stronger as I've aged. But that's because I've been in those fights, and I've made mistakes. And I'll give an example of a mistake that I made recently. It was during COVID, and the reason why I'm giving this example is because it's gonna happen again right now, because it feels like we're in crisis. And I think when we're in crisis, we go back to what we know, or what's easy. And what's easy is white supremacy, right? What's easy is all of the things that are around us, because those are the structures that are already there. And I'm gonna be very vulnerable and share an example of that. So when it was COVID, I was over special ed in Seattle. And of course, everything collapsed. And what did I do? I decided, okay, I need to find out if we're impacting our families. And what I did is I went to the typical special ed families to talk about their experiences. I was kind of desperate to hear from families, like, what's happening? What's happening with your kids? How can we change things? How can we improve? So I was doing the right things, and then one of my really good friends who's a Latina advocate called me out and said, what about our community, Concie? And I was like, oh, when she called me Concie, I'm in trouble. But I had to go back to the drawing board and go, you're right, I'm not talking to the bilingual families who have IEPs, children with IEPs. I'm not talking to them. I'm not, because they weren't showing up, okay, because they were afraid, whatever the reasons were. So I had to go back and redo it all. And what I had to redo is figure out another way to do community engagement that just centered bilingual families in my community. And we ended up having 6 community forums. I went to the community, I went to the centers, I did it on Zoom, we did it with interpreters. And guess what? I had 500 families show up, right? And that was amazing. And they gave me so much info, and they were mad, and they were not happy, and I took it. Everything that they said that wasn't happening, you know, in the classrooms, with the teachers, and then we decided everything we're hearing, we're gonna use that to change what's not working, right? We're gonna go back to the system and say, this is, and we told all 4,000 teachers, this is what your parents are saying is not working for them. This is what you're not doing. And was it perfect? No. But my point is even I, as an older person who'd been through the system, who thought I was doing the right things, was doing the wrong thing. Because I wasn't going back to my community. I wasn't going back to listen to my folks. I was doing what was easy. Because we were in COVID, you know, I had to move fast. And I'm worried right now that we're gonna do it again. Because people feel like they're in crisis. So what I'm telling you is, make the mistakes, learn from them, and then regroup, and then do it better. That's it. That's my only advice to you. That's all you can do. And then be brave, because right now is the time to be brave. And I know people are scared. I'm scared. I'm responsible. My community is mostly immigrant families, mostly Latino families. Like, I'm scared too. I'm scared for my kids. I have moms emailing me, are my kids safe at school? All those things. And I've done everything I can to make sure I have systems and procedures. I've worked with the chief of police. Like, I'm doing everything I can to make sure that my kids are protected in schools. I can't control the outside world either, but I'm gonna do my best. If I make a mistake, I'm gonna learn from it and refix it. And so just be brave, but also take care of yourself, because making mistakes and being public or being a leader, because even when you're a leader, you're stepping out and being vulnerable. Do it anyway, and then find your people, just like you said, find your people. Like, I have Susanna, I have certain people, I have Israel, I have Ivan, so find your people that sustain you, that tell, that kind of, even Ivan, I remember Ivan, I was feeling despondent one time, and Ivan Duran from Highline goes, Concie, our ancestors, we were made for this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna channel my ancestors, we were made for this. You are made for this, completely. You have everything, your family, your values, your culture, your language, you have it. You just gotta figure out how to step into it, that's it. And make those mistakes and learn from them.
Thank you. I love that you mentioned like self-care. Super important. I don't think we do a lot of self-care for ourselves. Like, we're all about serving others,
Yeah.
and we forget about ourselves. So it's also important that as you're going on this journey, you're going through those stressors, that we're also taking time to fill in what's in here so that we can go and do the work out there.
Yeah.
For our third question, how does your cultural identity affect the way you are perceived by your peers? How do you overcome stigmas others hold based on your cultural identity? Wow.
So I'll go really fast. Just really quickly, so my parents, my dad is from Mexico, my mom was 5th generation Mexican-American, but I'm also recognized that I'm a light-skinned Latina, right? And so with that comes some privilege, right? People say things to you that they would never say to anybody else. So you have to listen to that, right? So I would say for a long time, my parents were migrant workers in the Skagit Valley. So those of you from Skagit Valley College, I know exactly where you are at, because that's where I'm from. And I was ashamed of that for a long time. I just was, because I grew up in Stanwood, which is an all-white community. And I was really not fully accepting of all of my identities and all of my life and all of my upbringing. But I knew I loved my family and I loved my language and I loved all that stuff. But I figured out how to live in this world and live in this world, right? And it wasn't until I was 20 years old and met people like me who were going to school and trying to figure it all out that I realized I could bring all the worlds together, right? And now I'm a mom of children. My husband's from Morocco, so my children have multiple identities. They're Latina, they're Arab, they're, and so I have to navigate this as a mom now with my own children. And I will say the last election, my daughter was crying because she said, I'm the most hated person in America because, her dad's Muslim, she's Arab, she's Muslim, and she's a girl, right? So I'm actually, what I'm trying to do now is understand that we have all multiple identities, right? And it's okay to love all the parts of ourselves. Now I'm an old lady, that's my new identity. But it's okay to love all the parts of yourself and use everything you're learning about all your identities, right? To kind of just keep centering who you are, right? Because everything that happens, all our cultures, it makes us who we are. And I think we have so much to be proud of as a community and a culture. So, but I also, I'm just being honest, I wasn't always proud all the time. And I think that's because society did that to me, but I also own that too, because I love my mom, I love my dad, and I should never ever be ashamed of how hard they worked or anything like that. And I realize that now, and believe me, I've made amends completely to them for anything that I've done to make them feel less than. And so I think those are things that a lot of our kids are dealing with, maybe a lot of you are dealing with. Just go on the journey. I think it's back to that, go on the journey.
Just do it, right? like I said, I love these questions, so kudos, Serena, Andres. This brought me back to my continuous journey, with education. I love learning. I love learning from others and mistakes and things like that. And I actually had written something last month for one of my assignments, so I'm going to read to you guys a little bit of it because I really liked kind of the self-reflection opportunity. Part of what we have, one of our pillars for the educational leadership is leadership and educational systems. So, learning about our history and education and things like that. But it was really focused on ourselves. And I really enjoyed the material that they had. So, I said, for this month's LES work, because it opened up the door in my self-reflection that I didn't realize had closed. So sometimes, we're in things that we don't realize we've closed ourselves off to a part of ourselves because we've gotten caught up in the system. Being a woman of color, a Mexican-American, Chicana or Latina, an educated person of color, a young professional, a first-generation immigrant, were mainly just simple facts at one point. These were just part of who I was to others when filling out an application or writing about myself, components to a whole. Even then, I knew that they influenced how I showed up in the world, but I never really took the time and space to ponder a deeper understanding, to reflect on my identities in connection to the structure that I existed in. My identities and lived experiences shape and empower my leadership by allowing me to move in between worlds, or showing a face of me that I feel is needed to further my own mission of supporting and advocating for my community and myself. For example, being a woman of color, that has always been something that in society would have been told that we have to face many struggles, that prepared me mentally, as I knew I would have to work harder and be stronger to get to where I wanted to be in life, to be successful. This had made me more resilient, more disciplined, and more determined on my venture of life. On the other hand, it also allows me to connect with so many others in my community, both women and communities of color, because I can understand the barriers that are presented for many. And it continues just a little bit, but I want you guys to kind of take that time to think about and really the ownership of who you are. And sometimes realizing that we may have closed ourselves off because we're embarrassed of a piece of ourselves, or, oh, we have an accent. One thing that that my partner, so my boyfriend that I've been with for a few years now, noticed from the very beginning is, why do you present yourself as Marisol? Why don't you pronounce your name in Spanish? I'm like, well, it's because, people don't know how to pronounce it, and so I'm like, oh, it's easier for them. But then I changed that. I was like, okay, my name is Marisol. And if you can pronounce it, great. If you can't, that's okay. But that is taking back a piece of myself, of taking ownership of a name, that comes from my culture, from my family, who I am, right? I'm Marisol, not Marisol. So just remember, take some time to reflect on yourself and make sure that you're not on accident, sometimes maybe accidentally, right? We're hiding a piece of ourselves because we don't know that we've closed that part of ourselves so that we can fit in or become more digestible for people. Because that's not what we should be, right? We should be shining and we should be, what we were made for, by our ancestors. You are made to be where you are right now. So, that's what I'll say.
So this question and what everybody shared here so far, it's made me change my answer slightly. Only because it's true. I mean, I immigrated here when I was 15. And one of the first things that my community at the time, or the people that I surrounded myself with, is you have to assimilate. You have to learn English. You have to have no accent. You have to basically become white, but being brown. So that really had an effect on me, going to the name. Everybody in Mexico knows me as Manuel, everybody. And in here, it was so hard for them to, like for everybody that I knew, to pronounce my name that I changed it to Jose. I've had that name for so long now that it's my identity now. But it's something that is, it's a part of a simulation that is sort of like expected from all immigrants. So if I would say to you, just, occupy the space. Don't be afraid of say who you are, correct them politely if they pronounce your name wrong. You can phonetically ask them to say it. I have a couple of friends that do that successfully. They hold careers and it's like, no, I'll work it with you. Like, this is how you do it phonetically. So I think representation matters. It wasn't until very, very many years later that I realized how important that was. And looking back, I wish I've had things done differently. But, just know that being a brown person and just occupying space, it's enough sometimes. Because when I was going to school, when I first moved here, there wasn't very many Latinos. We're talking like early 2000s, like I moved here in 2000. And a lot of the times we went to grocery stores, any place, and a lot of the times we were the only brown people. And that didn't change in school sometimes, in classrooms, oftentimes I was the only one that was brown, or that had an accent. I used to work so much on my accent just to smooth it out, and at one point, it's like, you know what, it's okay, I'm Mexican. I was born in Mexico, I moved here, I speak 2 languages, it's something to be proud of. If I have an accent, it's because I understand 2 different languages, not because I'm lesser than you. So, just own that to yourself and know that you have a lot of value, you have a lot of resilience in you, and don't, doing the easy things is, doing sometimes like the right thing is easy, right? Or it feels easy to do things to assimilate or to fit in. So be brave and do the hard thing, which is stand up for yourself. If they pronounce your name wrong, say, that's not how you pronounce my name, but I'll work you through it. Or just occupy space, represent the community by just being there. In my team, I'm a team of 30, actually 60 now. So in my team, I'm the only person, like brown person from Mexico or like from Latino community. Everybody else is either from Asia, Europe, or the US, right? So, just by being there, me occupying this space, I don't see it, but I hope somebody takes notice and say, hey, if he's there, I can be there too. So just keep that to yourself. Just remember that, just occupying space, being somewhere, it's a good thing, it's enough, and you inspire others by doing it, even without you knowing it.
So for our fourth question, we have, in your current role, what is the most significant issue experienced by the community you serve? What is the difference from what you have experienced in previous roles?
I'll just go briefly here. As I mentioned, I'm the only Latino in my current role. So what that allowed me to do is that all the community that I built during college, joining groups, I was undocumented, so I was in a documented group. So all of those resources, community people that I've met, I now try to give back as much as I can and say, hey, there's a talk, a seminar, there's we need representation. Do you have students and they would want to tour campus and see what it's like to be an engineer? Or I've gone to, actually I've been to Skagit Valley College a couple of times to talk to students in one of their programs, just to trying to remind them that it's important to have an education and why that is important. It's not only because you're getting trained to do something, is because, at least for me, getting and going to college was an eye-opening for me. It exposed me to, trailblazers that paved the way before me. It helped me learn a lot of the history that I was not aware of, and that nobody talks about. And it also helps you to build community. So I think now that I have a different position, I just want to keep expanding that and, be even more involved, bring more people in, give them more opportunities, because I want our community to be fully represented and not minutely representing as it is now. I think we have so much potential, and a lot of that potential, a lot of the times goes unnoticed. So in my current role, I try to do that as much as I can. And as my career progresses, I'll keep continuing to do so, and then hopefully one day I'll be able to have as many accomplishments as, I know I forgot your name, but
Pedroza,
Concie. So, I just want to be able to build a career where I'm proud of and go look back and say, I did all those things, I helped my community, and it makes me feel good, and now we're fully represented.
Yeah, I think for me, something that has been new and that I've realized very recently is the cultural assimilation. I think is one of the biggest issues in our community. Is the loss of our identities, that we've been taught to fit into these things, into these concepts and notions, that we've forgotten a lot of those beautiful aspects of our community, and that we don't have to separate them. We don't have to be, always, sometimes, it's an advantage to be able to present yourself in different ways, and it works, but they're all inside of you, and so you bring those every day with you, right? So be proud of that, and just remember that, you can exist with your cultural identities, and I think this is a big thing too, being like Chicana in a sense, or Mexican American. We are, el dicho era, ni de aquí ni de allá, but I've been hearing a lot more of de aquí y de allá. Why do we have to choose where we are from when we are both? So just take that with you guys. You can have both things. You don't have to be either or. The pop culture. If you want it, get it.
Get it. So I think the biggest issue is always racism. It just is. And you have to deal with it in, you're serving others, helping teachers. I have teachers of color in my districts, students of color, all on and on. And it's just pervasive everywhere. And I think, and then it leans on you heavy because, like I said before, we have 269 districts or 89 districts in the state of Washington. Only 85 are women and only 5 are women of color, right? And you think of men of color as well, it's more than women of color, but it's still not the number of women serving. I think it's like 10 to 15 men of color in the state of Washington. That's a progressive state, right? So, and that's because people who are making those decisions, and that's why I'm gonna go back to what Jose said, you have to be at the table, right? You have to be at the table making decisions. That's why I'm glad you're aspiring to be at those tables, because the more we can be at all the tables, or whatever, the more we can influence whose interests are being served, right? Who's this for? And I say that because I'm gonna say this because I'll just say in Cedar Woolley, my good friend Miriam, we were like up until a week ago, there were 6 women of color. And as of Friday, her last day was Friday, and it's all over the Cedar Woolley district page, and I'm sorry, like, they have this beautiful message on there, but I know why, really why.
Okay, you know why.
I know why she's not there. Yeah, I know that. I'm on a text thread with her. You'll say, I know why she's not there. I know, and I'm just saying to you, so that's their story, and then there's the story, right? There's the truth. And I will be honest, the news and politics never tells the truth. Right? So I just think it's important that when you say storytelling, we have to get our stories out there. We have to change, we have to counter narrative all the time, whatever people believe about any of us. We have to tell the truth. We have to be out there and say, no, this is really who I am. This is my story. This is on and on and on. And I think, so for me, it's racism. Like right now, you know, I have to deal with the racist practices that are happening on schools, right? And that's because they're all racist. They're just racist practices. I'm just gonna call it what it is. And so I have to figure out how to make sure I'm protecting, because I will say one thing, there's the truth. Executive orders aren't legal. Most of those executive orders are not legal, right? So that's what people are running on, fear. I know the truth. The truth is, they're lies. And I'm gonna I actually have an anti-racist statement that was written by my students. How can I face my students and tell them that their words don't matter? That their experiences don't matter? I can't. So my board adopted the student statement as a policy. So that's on my website. And it says, anti-racist statement for Tukwila School District, written by the Tukwila students. Because they're mostly kids of color. I'm 80% kids of color, I'm 80% poverty, I'm 60% bilingual, well, identified bilingual, I'm more. Come on, like my kids are saying, this is what I need to be educated. I'm not going, so I'm gonna stand up and face whatever it is. I figured out if I get fired, I'll retire, whatever, but I'm gonna face it. Because my students deserve it, and I actually gave them a voice to say, this is what we need to be educated in our school district. These are the type of teachers we need. This is the type of curriculum, and they all said anti-racist curriculum, anti-racist educators, anti-racist everything. And so guess what? I'm gonna stand on that, right? So that's the biggest issue. And then the terms are, you know, bias, you know, microaggressions, on and on and on. Guess what? You're gonna get all of that. You're gonna feel all of that. It's gonna happen in all your, it's gonna happen to you. I have walked in a room as the associate superintendent of Seattle Public Schools. I have walked into a room to ask to talk to 2 principals, and I was denied by 3 people. I heard I'm the second most senior person in the district, and I can't even talk to a principal. But I know if my 2 white colleagues walked in, they would have been handed over as a silver platter. Racism exists. And people say, well, how do you know it was racism? Oh, well, okay, sexism, racism, I don't know. Maybe I'm too loud, I don't know. I don't care, right? So I'm just saying, like, it happens to even me all the time. I'm in a leadership position, and even today, I experience microaggressions. I see racism, on and on and on. So I'm just telling you, it doesn't matter how high up you go through the ladder, it's just more subtle.
Yeah.
It's just more subtle. The higher you go, the more, because what I will say, the most educated people in the United States are the ones that weaponize against us. They know our words. They don't know what they mean, but they know our words. And that's what they're doing right now. They're weaponizing against us. And so we need to fight back, and we need to use our ancestors' tools to fight back. So that's the most critical issue is racism. We need to name it. We can call it whatever else, the experiences, but it is racism. And so we have to use our own ancestors' tools, because we were, you know what, civil rights movements, you know what, Cesar Chavez, all those things. We have the tools. We've got to work together and use our community to figure out how we're going to strategize to fight this. But that's it. That's the only, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That's what it is.
Absolutely. So we have about 8 minutes left for our last question that we have for everybody. What actions would you call upon our students to take in order to make a change?
Get credentialed,
Yes.
get your degrees, get your experiences, do what these 2 are doing right here. They're just still in it. They're getting their master's degrees, they're getting all the things. Because no one can take away your education, no one can take away your credentials, No one can take away your pride, no one can take away your intellect, no one. So get a credential, get your experiences, and then no one can say to you, you're not qualified for what you wanna do. And then get at the table, at the decision-making tables, fight what you gotta do so that you can make the change in whatever field you choose, but be at the table. And if someone says the tables, there's no seats, you say make a longer table, okay? Just get in there.
Thank you, Lakota. I just love being able to listen and to be able to share, but I love listening to others, and I think that's something that you guys have to always keep in mind too, is you can learn so much from anybody around you. Pick up the good things, take what you can, leave what you don't want, right? We don't have to take everything that everybody tells us. Or the saying, take it with a grain of salt. You guys are all unique. You all have a different experience. You all have a different calling or vision or mission in your own life. And so, learn from each other. I think Rosario is definitely one of the people who's always told me, get your degrees. And that is probably one of the reasons why I'm in my doctorate program, is because she was so very adamant about me going back to school and getting my doctorate, is that certification of saying, I do know what I'm talking about. Because people will work in the community for many, many years, and you could have 40, 60, whatever, 100 years of experience, and people are going to be like, oh, what's your degree in? And they will find ways to unvalidate you, because that's what they want to do. They want to prove you wrong, that you are not enough. So yes, please, please, please continue going to school. I never thought about going to school so fast, back to back, because I did Running Start, and then I took about 6 months in between my degrees, max a year, and now 25 in a doctorate program. It's a lot, but it's what my path has kind of taken me that way, and I decided to take it. The imposter syndrome, please, please do not let that stop you, because that almost stopped me from actually applying to my doctorate program. I was like, I'm too young, I don't have enough experience, what if they think that? What if they think? But what did I think, right? And so I didn't know what was going to happen, and I took it with my own words. I was like, okay, I empower all these other people about, do it. What the worst that they can say is no, and I almost let that stop me. And so please don't think that just because you don't always know what you're doing, you're not doing the correct thing. Because you may very well be doing the thing that you're meant to be, but you just haven't had that experience yet. And finally, the last thing I would also want you guys to think about is something that we've all kind of brought and shared, is the fire. Something that my professor, he's amazing, I wish everybody could hear him, but he says, I stay mad, I guess is the terminology of mad, but it's like that fire, right? I stay with that fire lit so that I don't have to get ready, because I am ready. So that when anybody brings something to you that in your instincts and your feeling in your gut, you're like, that is racist, that is rude, that is disrespectful, that is whatever. If you feel like something is wrong, you can take your fire and say, no, I'm going to defend myself, I'm going to defend my community, I'm going to defend somebody else, because maybe it's not to me. I haven't experienced blatant, I would say, or blunt racism. There's micro things and things that happen, but I know that the way I present myself is very, very, well put together, very well spoken, very, I present in a certain way, and so people, I think, know better than to tell me something. So, just take that with you. It all starts with one, so just remember that.
Yeah, and
And just to echo everything, somebody once told me, and it stuck with me, nobody is going to take that knowledge from you, no one. And it just stuck with me because I knew that whatever I learned anywhere, whether classroom, community, nobody was going to take that away. And if you put a degree on front of it, that's also yours. That's your hard work. Imposter syndrome is real. I mean, sometimes I still feel that I am not capable of doing something. If they give me a new project, sometimes I have no idea how to do it. But if anything I've learned by sitting where you are, is that you just have to take it small bits at a time, and then eventually, you know, you become better and better, and then next thing you know, you're already done. When I started my academic career, I was working 2 jobs, going to school part-time, and many times I just said, you know what, I just don't want to do it, it's too much work. And I just stuck with it, and slowly. And then I was able and fortunate to find a scholarship to finish my bachelor's. And then after that, it was like the master's, like I don't feel like I'm good enough, you know, like you mentioned. But I applied anyway, because, you know, as Marisol said earlier, you know, like the worst answer that you can get is no. So I applied anyway. I got in, and then I also was fortunate enough to get a job at the same time. So then I said, okay, so now what? Now I have to do the master's on top of work. So, you know, it's gonna be a lot. But I kind of took the same approach I did when I was doing my AA, and then, you know, just took it one class at a time. I mean, it's taking me 4 years, but, you know, in June, I'll be done with my master's, and who knows what's next. But just know that you just take it small bits at a time. Your representation matters. You have to occupy space in that classroom. Knowledge is going to take you a long ways, and you can take that anywhere. Your degree and your knowledge, you can take that everywhere, and you can share it with your community because they will need it in order to get where you are. So there are other people there are not even in this classroom, but they want to be here. And one day you'll be sitting in front of students and other people, inspiring other people to do the same thing that they inspired you on. So, you know, it's a way to give back. And if anything you take from here is just the knowledge you get in these classrooms, in this community, in these meetings, nobody's going to take that away from you. And it's just one more tool in your toolbox that you can use for your life later. So.
Thank you to our panelists that took time out of their day to come and talk to us students. Biggest advice, everyone, and this is what I used to do in LLI, I used to connect, well, Rosario used to tell me this all the time, connect with everyone. She used to be to me, get business cards, write the dates on when you get them. You just never know who you might need to connect with in the future, who might be your mentor in these spaces. So make sure you're asking all those questions, asking names, introducing yourself, doing that firm handshake. You want to make sure that, you know, people are knowing who you are as you're going on in your journey. You never know who might be able to help you out. So thank you, Dr. Pedroza. Thank you, Marisol. Thank you, Jose, for coming with us today on this beautiful Saturday. If we can give them another round of applause.